What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of Positively Uncensored, your favorite reality TV and interview podcast. It's your host, Leah.
Today, I am going to be diving into the chaos of Tell Me Lies Season 3, Episodes 3 and 4. Before I dive into the episodes, I want to thank everybody for tuning into my Tell Me Lies content. If you're listening to this on Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube, please do me a favor. Make sure that you leave a comment. You can leave a comment on Spotify. You can leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure that you like this video, hype this video. If you are watching on YouTube, it's been a little difficult to gather all the Tell Me Lies fans this season, and I am depending on all of you who are already tapped in to help me corral them, help me find them. So, thank you to every single person who is new here, going through all of the theories with me. As you can tell, I am not joined by my best friend, Bree, this week to recap these two episodes. Make sure that you go back and listen to us recap episodes 1 and 2 together. We analyzed, we theorized, we hypothesized, we pontificated. We did everything in these episodes that I feel like the official Tell Me Lies podcast is missing in their interviews with the cast, which they are so fortunate to have. But go back and listen to those episodes. Make sure that you follow Bree. She has her own podcast, Bree the Black Sheep. You can follow her on all platforms. Without further ado, actually, one more bit of housekeeping. I was just recently on Kea from Bravo, We're Black's podcast. It was one of my favorite crossovers I've done. I've been such a fan of Kea for years now, so it was exciting to finally link up with her and collaborate. So make sure that you head over to her podcast channel and check that out. I will try to put that in the details of this episode. In fact, let me make a note for myself right now so that I can add that and you can check it out. Also, reminder, I am in the middle of doing a rebrand. I've been working with an amazing artist whose work I love, and that's going to be launching soon. So Positively Uncensored will be having a different look, but it is still the same podcast. In fact, it's going to be getting even better. I'm adding some fun elements. So if you see the logo change, if you see things looking a little bit different, it's still me. I'm still running things. Episode 3 starts with us seeing Lucy's nightmare. And I don't know about all of you, but for me, it was pretty obvious immediately that this was a nightmare because she was in bed with Evan and there wasn't a little date in the corner like how they start scenes with. So I knew that we weren't going back in time all the way to Lucy's freshman year. But she's laying in bed with Evan and Bree walks in on the two of them in bed together and asks her, "What are you doing?" After this nightmare, Lucy abruptly goes to meet with one of her professors about a missed deadline that she has. And I'm not quite sure if I remember if this was for a paper that Lucy was working on. It sort of sounded like she was applying for something. Maybe she's finally applying to go on that trip that she's always wanted to go on, that her father went on. I think it was a trip to India. And then we go to Pippa and Diana waking up together as some of the awkwardness hangs in the air because Pippa's getting ready for her date with Wrigley later, and there are layers to their situation. I loved how Diana sort of acknowledges that, which I'll get to in a second, but I'm really loving seeing their dynamics. In the last episode, in episode 2, Steven and Lucy broke up. He decided that he just can't get over her fucking Evan. And this episode, Evan and Wrigley bump into each other, have a quick conversation. And all I remember, but still felt like it was important to add, is that Wrigley comments that Steven doesn't have feelings re his breakup with Lucy. And also it's just easier to be at peace with Steven, which tells me that Wrigley has been on to Steven for some time, especially after the passing of his brother. He is not just this dumb, I'm sorry, my washer is going off if you hear beeping. He is not just this dumb jock that people perceive him as. He is not just his grades. He is not just his level of partying, but he sees through Steven. And it's easier rather than call Steven out or make an enemy out of Steven, to just know who he is and move accordingly as such. You'll notice that Wrigley never really confides in Steven, especially not after what he confided in him last year, which was stuff about Drew, because Steven always weaponizes that. And I think also Wrigley may even suspect that Steven's a sociopath. Again, the writers of this show have said that despite Steven being a sociopath in the book, that they're not going for that. They want his character to be layered, and they felt like it would be a bit one note for him to just be completely unemotional. However, I think that he still is a sociopath. Like, I think that I understand that, but I think that Steven still has layers while being a sociopath in this show. And I think it's interesting to try to figure out what he's doing, because there's always a game of cat and mouse. Next, we see Lucy and Bree and Pippa pre-gaming in their room, and Pippa's talking to Lucy about how once she gets out of a relationship with somebody, it seems like she's a serial monogamous relationship person, and how everybody should be single for a little bit of their time in college, which is a little bit ironic coming from Pippa, because to my knowledge, she has been dating somebody since we've met her on screen. Now, granted, I don't remember if Pippa's actually in the same year as them or if she was a year older. I feel like she was at Baird for a little bit of time before Lucy and had already had an established friend group. But we saw her season 1 with Wrigley, and now she's having a romantic relationship, which I'm living for, blooming with Diana. But I just found that a little bit ironic. Wrigley walks into the pregame with a huge bag of pink Starburst and apologized because he felt like he was a dick to Pippa the night before. And here's the thing. If we go back, they were all making a decision to take MDMA. Diana told Pippa that that's not a good idea, that he's going to come down and potentially be very depressed after because it takes all of your serotonin. And Wrigley sort of like, what is it called? Lashed out at Pippa for her trying to help him. And Pippa decided to go home. And me and my best friend had conversations about this. Was Pippa in the wrong for leaving Wrigley, knowing that he was in a vulnerable state and potentially about to do drugs? And then the answer that we came up with that I presented was, I think that Pippa, having spent her entire winter break home with Wrigley and taking care of him and like keeping a watchful eye on him, I think number one, she was drained, rightfully so. And I also think that she didn't want to feel like that. Like, they're in a relationship, right? Whether she's in a relationship because she feels guilty or not, they're in a relationship, and she's not trying to parent Wrigley. Like, she actually is trying to support him. So if he feels like she's keeping a watchful eye under him, and if he doesn't appreciate her, I think that they just both needed space. But anyways, I appreciate his apology. We know that they have an inside joke with the pink starbursts. We know that this also gives Pippa a pang of guilt because of how many bags of starburst Wrigley had to go to do this. I'm gonna try to edit out all of my pauses, but on the IFCOM, you see a pause where I'm just drinking water. I am fighting off a sickness right now, unfortunately. If you're on the East Coast, if you're in the South, if you're anywhere where there's weather right now that changes, you know that a winter storm is coming. In the next scene, Steven is sitting at the bar, pounding drinks and calling Sadie while it's going straight to voicemail. And the bar that he's sitting at conveniently is the bar where Max works. And we know that Lucy ultimately has a long relationship with Max because they were together up until the day of Bree's wedding, pretty much. So Sadie doesn't want to talk to Steven, and this is the fallout and repercussions from her getting a glimpse of who he actually is in the voicemail that he left Lucy last semester. It's apparent to me that as he's having these rejected interactions with his sister, that he's definitely still pissed at Lucy. Like, despite seemingly trying to have a relationship with her, it's not just the fact that she slept with Evan. He wants to punish Lucy for very many reasons. And I think that having a relationship with Lucy is the easiest way to sabotage her and have her under his watchful eye. And I really think that that's what it's about with Steven. So he's at this bar, and eventually he gets a call back and he thinks that it's Sadie and it's his mom. And her voice is just so recognizable. Katie Seagal's voice is so recognizable for a number of reasons. But just in my childhood, I'll always recognize her as Pat's voice in Smart House. So she calls him back and she's like, stop. Stop calling your sister. You are freaking her out. And she's still disturbed by the voicemail that Steven left for Lucy, and she actually thinks that it's a good thing for Sadie to consider coming back home and them spending time with each other. Essentially, we know that Steven's mom is a narcissist, and she's loving the fact that Steven did something to fuck up his relationship with Sadie, because ultimately she never wanted Sadie to go away to college anyways. She wanted to keep her under her control and keep her miserable. She's like a emotional vampire, right? So Steven hears this, and like this is part of the plot where they try to give Steven layers, and it seems like he's really disturbed by this. Like he wants Sadie to get out, like he doesn't want Sadie to go through the torment that he went through. But as my best friend Bree pointed out in our last episodes, it's really not about, in our opinions, as we are receiving the show, right? It's not about actually wanting to protect Sadie. Sadie is an extension of Steven, and seeing Sadie get out makes Steven feel like he's gotten out. Like it's still centered around himself, even though it looks like he's trying to be helpful, or at least like that's the dynamic that they have created for Steven, and how I'm forced to interpret his actions as well as my best friend. So basically, Steven hears this. He's like, oh my God. So he tries to ask if he can come home because he says that he's also going through something, i.e. the breakup with Lucy. And his mom immediately shoots this down because, like I said, she wants to keep Steven away from Sadie. Steven, for whatever selfish motives, was encouraging Sadie to get out of the house, to leave their mother. And this is the space that she needed between them so that she could really get in there and brainwash Sadie again or guilt trip her. Now, we are at this après ski party, and everybody's there except for Steven. And this is the first time that we see Bree invite Alex out somewhere, and she lets Evan know that this is her foster brother that she just found out recently was attending the same college as her. Now, there's something interesting going on because despite him being her foster brother, we know that they're not technically related. We know that they also share some trauma together. He makes a comment about Bree's dimples being the giveaway as to how he knew it was Bree. And Alex does this frequently. Like the only time we hear him say anything remotely humanizing is about Bree. So it seems like there's love for her, whether it's because of the trauma that they've went through and friendly platonic, or whether he wants Bree. I think he wants Bree. Now, Molly comes up to Lucy and just gets in there and says, I'm so sorry for what you're going through with your breakup with Steven. And after Lucy removes herself from the conversation to walk over to the punch bowl where Evan finds her, and she tells him that Steven is going to hold this over his head and her head for the rest of their life. She also points out that if Evan really wanted to be honest, and if it was about honesty, then he should go and tell Bree. Evan retorts with how actually him and Bree aren't even together anymore, so he doesn't really owe Bree loyalty. But Lucy, who is still friends with Bree, could go and tell her. This game of them not telling Bree to protect her while taking away her ability to make decisions about who is close with her would ultimately just add further trauma to Bree about who she really can trust. So it's interesting that this is the path that they're going, while simultaneously not interesting at all because they're 22 or 23 years old. Also, the misogyny of Evan to be honest with this towards Steven, but not tell Bree. And he's allowing Steven to make a decision about whether or not they maintain their friendship, but he's not allowing Bree that. All of these characters are layered and problematic in many ways. In many ways, this show reminds me of Industry because the characters are so seedy and they're all doing something wrong, but some like less than others. And yet you still find a way to kind of root for them. Like, there's a lot of stuff we have to unpack about Evan's character, but I'm still kind of rooting for him, even though he's a bad person. Like, he's a bad person and he's misogynistic. But when he tells Steven to fuck off, I'll still enjoy that. Now, Alex and Lucy end up having a conversation. Remember, this is Bree's foster brother, and Lucy's male-centered, right? So Lucy, and she's vulnerable. She's post-breakup. We know Lucy's looking for a rebound. I knew this story was coming before it was written, right? But Alex tells Lucy that none of them are probably going to know each other in 10 years and that college is the most unserious part of their life, which at this point, Lucy is just hoping is true. But Alex doesn't know Steven. And once again, like how I felt with Leo, I'm just hoping that one character's introduction in this storyline is because they're going to beat the shit out of Steven eventually. Like, if Alex, I can deal with the weird cat and mouse thing with you and Lucy, I guess, because you're also a bad person, if someday it's going to result in you beating the shit out of Steven. As they're standing there, Lucy is still ruminating over the fact that Alex told her that she can't handle things when he delivered the anxiety medications while she was mid panic attack. And this is just further proof, like, Alex is a misogynist, and also that was another example of the only humanizing thing that he said, or like nice thing he said, was about Bree, implying that the two of them knew how to go through hard things and not react the way that Lucy was, which again, misogynistic viewpoint, or at the very least, very close-minded. But this is on her mind. So she tells him, I actually can handle things. Anytime you bring up emotions, you'll see this throughout episodes 3 and 4. Alex is quick to like shoot it down in some capacity, right? So as soon as Lucy discloses this, he tells her that he's a much better friend than a boyfriend. And he also doesn't do relationships at this stage in his life. It's all transactional. They continue to flirt. It's clear they want to fuck. And eventually he leaves the party and Lucy follows after him after getting permission from Bree to do so. Now, Bree and Evan have an awkward conversation where she comments on, so you and Molly, huh? Because now that her and Evan aren't seeing each other, he basically has permission to go after the girl. Mind you, Molly slapped him last season because he led her on while he was just waiting for Bree. And the exact same situation is happening right now, right? Because he says to Bree in this moment even that, yeah, you know, me and Molly, but you know that if you told me to stop talking to her in a second, I would. Evan ends up leaving the party with Molly. And like I said, Lucy had ran after Alex. Now, why Lucy went home with Alex, I don't know, because I don't care how good it is. It is weird for you to be like texting in the middle of it, especially the first time. So they go home. He's very rude. You can also tell that Lucy's feeling very self-conscious. She gets on top of him. They're making out. They start to get unclothed. And he sends a text message and says that it's important business, which makes Lucy feel even more self-conscious. And Alex tells her, look, it seems like you're looking for validation and I'm just not looking to give anybody reassurance right now. Steven gets back to his place to see Wrigley, who tells him, hey, you should probably check in with Evan. He's been worried about you. And again, this is because Lucy and Steven have now broken up, which Steven is choosing to victimize himself and blame on Evan. Now, this is just further proof again that Wrigley is actually a good friend and actually cares about people. He doesn't want Evan to continue to worry when Steven is fine. Steven says Evan's going to be fine because that's the level of empathy that Steven's able to give any situation. He believes that everybody but him will always be fine. Now, he's not getting enough empathy from Wrigley in this conversation, right? So he tries to bring up how his mom is being awful and how his mom won't let him come home and stuff with Sadie to get sympathy. And he tells Wrigley, you just don't get it because your parents are normal. Wrigley looks at him like, okay, my parents my parents who are grieving my brother and looking at me as if I did it, which is what I think he wanted to say. But instead, he says to Stephen, I don't think you can play that card anymore. My life is objectively way worse than yours at this point. And this is just, again, further proof that Wrigley sees through Steven. He's always the victim. He tries to use his personal situations to make his friends feel empathy to him. He's always playing somebody, and Wrigley just doesn't care to be a part of it anymore. The next scene was very hard to watch, so trigger warning. If you watched the episode, you already know, but trigger warning, sexual assault. This was just hard to watch on many levels, okay? But Lucy sees that Bree's getting these calls from Steven and tells her, do not answer, and rushes over to Steven's house. What ends up happening is Steven says, I just want to fucking hurt you. And this is the only way that I know how. I just unfortunately don't know of anything else. And that's when she ends up thinking of something she did that might be worse than her having sex with her best friend's boyfriend, and tells him about how she lied about the sexual assault. Again, I'm going to be honest, this scene was so hard to watch. I don't even remember. I think she told him why she told this lie, but I don't know that she again spilled Pippa's information. So I don't know that she said Pippa's name or just she was trying to help a friend that it actually did happen to. But Steven has no boundaries. He's a true sociopath. And he says, you know what? That actually can work. And it's not that I'm not going to tell Bree ever, but I'm at least not going to tell her right now. And I wish so badly that Lucy had left in this moment. I'm trying to understand the position that she's in. Steven's abusive, that's done things to her mind and how she's seeing the situation. This is also an impossible situation. But Lucy, you sleeping with Bree's boyfriend versus him forcing you to say something that will not only impact your life, but other women, what to me felt like there was a clear choice there. And I will never say that Lucy and Steven are equally as bad, because they're absolutely not. But Lucy did pick self-preservation there. She picked not wanting to go through this with Bree. She can say as many times as she wants that Bree's in an extremely vulnerable position, that Bree just doesn't trust people, this will kill Bree. Part of that is she doesn't want to see the look on Bree's face as she tells her this. Part of that is that she doesn't want to lose somebody who's so close to her. Part of her is the shame for this situation. Now, Evan should be carrying just as much shame, right? It's deeply kind of misogynistic that Lucy feels so much more shame than Evan about this situation, especially when, I'm so sorry, since this is a scripted series and these are just characters, I can say that the situation where Evan and Lucy slept together, something felt off about that, right? Consensual, sure, maybe, but the fact that Lucy was vulnerable and we had seen snippets of Evan kind of pining over her earlier sets the intention that he was attracted to Lucy and he would, if there was a chance, hook up with Lucy, and then he got that chance. Whereas Lucy is a freshman and shit-faced, and her boyfriend just publicly left her and embarrassed her, like she said, in a coconut bra. So I just feel like some of this is misplaced. And ultimately, I felt like Bree would probably, as angry as she would be, probably understand, especially if someone would ever just tell the full extent of the situation, which we finally do see Lucy do either this episode or next to Diana. But if she just said, listen, Steven's putting me in an impossible situation, Bree would believe her about, at the very least, what Steven was asking her to do. And I think Pippa would, and I think that their friends would. On top of that, we have the fact that Lucy could have just ran out of that room and straight to the police station. I don't know if it's just me being 30 years old and having the privilege of not being in this situation, but the way that at this age right now, I would guffaw, laugh in Steven's face, and then run to the police station. I don't care what kind of mental legwork and mind manipulation he's trying to do about making me seem like I'm not a credible source. What you're not going to do is force me to create this video. What you're not going to do is act like you have something over me. And that's the thing. Like, in order to take away Steven's power, you just have to accept the shame of whatever you've done and whatever's happened that he's holding over you, and then put all of his dirt out there as well. Like, that's truly the way to deal with him. So he ends up forcing her after she's disclosed this, right? Because I got a little bit off track. After she said that this happened, he decides that she's got to tell everybody and come clean. And she's saying, should I post it on Facebook? Like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? You cannot tell Bree. And ultimately, Steven decides that no, you'll record a video. And he maintained entire control over what Lucy said in this video. It was very disturbing. It was, initially she tries to say, like, I'm so sorry for what I did. I feel remorse. I tried to help a friend and stick up for a friend. I never meant to hurt anybody. And it ends up, as she's crying and breaking down over this, Steven forces her to say that she lied because she wants attention. And he takes this video and ultimately just sits on it, which is even scarier. I also just wonder at this point, again, I don't know if I'm thinking just so far removed from the situation, but I feel like I would pay people, and this is, again, fictitious, no encouraging violence. But if I'm Lucy at this point, I'm just paying 3 sophomores $50 each to beat Steven's ass. Like, stop fucking with me. Like, and I know that we've seen Steven get his ass beat and then like be happy that it happened so that he could play woe is me. But like, Steven just needs like a consistent ass beating. I don't know. We go straight from that traumatic scene with Steven and Lucy to being in the cafeteria with Bree and the freshman whose name I will never remember. I think it's Amanda. Okay. She sees Bree in the cafe, comes up to her and asks her, why haven't you texted me? And again, this is because Bree has found out now, suspicions have been confirmed, that Amanda and Oliver are sleeping together. And she's upset by this. So Amanda's trying to talk to her like everything's normal because she doesn't know the reasons that Bree sought her out to be friends, right? And she's like, my professors are so much tougher this year. And Bree ends up shaming her in the middle of this conversation and telling her that what she's doing with somebody's husband is gross. On one hand, I hate that this was Bree's reaction because she's going through exactly what Bree went through last year. And yet simultaneously, I don't even hold Bree accountable that much in that situation because I can imagine that because there was a power imbalance and purposeful manipulation here, like she was being preyed on, there are a lot of conflicting emotions. Part of her is disgusted with Oliver. Part of her is disgusted that Oliver just discarded her. Part of her wishes that this was just Oliver's game and that his wife was never involved because it felt like a secret between just Oliver and Bree. Part of her feels pissed that she was replaced because if this is going to be your thing, then why do you no longer want me, right? And I think part of her feels resentful because Amanda represents the naive girl that Oliver easily preyed on just last year. Like, she represents a little bit of herself. Again, I'm just projecting and hypothesizing, but we don't really have a podcast or that we don't really have their interview that's going in deep about all the theories. So these are just my thoughts. Steven, woe is me, after forcing Lucy to record this horrible video, right? Like, still finds the way to play like a normal human being for 15 minutes and goes to Evan's house to intentionally talk about how his sister's tuition is having some problems and that he's really worried about her being forced to go back home with their mom. And he does this because he knows that Evan is going to offer the money. We also know that while he was forcing Lucy to record that video, there was a time where she said, like, you're not going to want to tell Bree, let's be honest. Like, you're going to want to hold this over my head and Evan's head. And he said, yeah, you know what? I'm actually not ready to be done with Evan yet. And then he goes right into his room, right? So this was the purpose. This is the intention. He needed $28,000 to cover Sadie's tuition, which Evan is very well off. His family's well off. So this was, what did they call it in industry recently? Salami money. I think that's what rich people call like millions of dollars. So that was their salami money, right? And after Evan offers for his dad to just foot the bill, make sure that Sadie gets through school, he says, we're good, right? Which means, are you going to forget about me and Lucy and can we be good again? And we know that that's just not true, right? That's just not going to be true. The episode ends with Diana being pregnant. She saw on the pregnancy test. I also thought this earlier because we saw her like rush after Pippa left or something in the morning to throw up. And this episode was just very heavy all around because I barely took notes on the ending because it was hard to watch. Lucy ends up going back over to Alex's house. She has aggressive sex. He grabs her by the throat with no problem, which again was something that she had tried in the past with somebody else and they were disgusted by her. I think it was Leo, potentially. They have sex and Lucy asks for him to call her worthless and pathetic. And why this is so disturbing, not to kink shame people, is this didn't feel like this is what Lucy wants. This feels like Lucy's punishing herself and like Lucy has been abused by Steven to think that this is the treatment that she deserves. So additionally, my best friend, Bree, who's not here, I'm going to relay what she said to me because it makes so much sense. Why this feels wrong is because like there is a power imbalance, that there just is, right? So Leo telling Lucy that she's worthless, it felt like I was watching an assault. Like that's what it felt like to me. There didn't seem to be anything intimate or enjoyable about that. Again, like I said, it felt like she was punishing herself more than she was getting off from that. It didn't seem like it was something that brought her pleasure. It seemed like it brought her pain. And yeah, that's why that felt wrong. And that's how episode 3 ends. All right, let's get into episode 4. And if you have not already engaged with this episode in some way, like it, leave a review, leave a comment, hype it, then I hate to tell you, but you might be a bad person. But it's okay because you can redeem yourself by doing that right now. Episode 4 of Tell Me Lies starts with Diana on the phone scheduling her abortion for the earliest appointment that she has. This episode was titled Fix Me Up Girl by the team of Tell Me Lies, and I think that instead it should have been Diana's iconic quote, which is, being a woman is a prison. She has multiple iconic quotes this episode. She ends up bumping into Molly right after this phone call, confiding in her, and Molly's reaction kind of sent me because yes, like she listens to Diana, she's not judgmental, she offers to be there for her, but then she immediately just goes to Evan's house, who texted her for an 11 a.m. booty call, and asks Diana to cover for her to the professor in their class. I think that this is quite a big ask for somebody who is like in the process of scheduling their abortion and has such heavy news. I think this is also setting the scene to show us that Molly is very male-centered, her character. She is instantly leaving, ditching class last minute, and just available at Evan's beck and call. It's giving desperate, right? Now, she goes to Evan's house and we see the very end of them putting their clothes back on after they've hooked up. She tells Evan that she's going to go on birth control, and Evan excitedly asks if that means that he does not have to wear condoms. Molly didn't even have to bring up Diana or bring up somebody that they know being pregnant. I feel like she couldn't wait to get rid of this information. It was like $100 bill burning a hole in her pocket. She needed to tell somebody. She could have just told Evan, yeah, you still have to wear condoms. Pregnant, it's not guaranteed to not be pregnant, and left it at that. But she says, no, like, of course you have to wear condoms, and somebody that we know is pregnant. He's barely even interested in this. And he's like, oh, okay. Who? And she's like, I just can't tell you. It's like somebody that we know. It's so important. And she's like, okay, it's Diana. And he's like, oh. Big mistake. So Diana's news, right? It went from Diana being on the phone. We're going to play telephone, and I'm going to tell you the order of how Diana's news travels. It goes from Diana disclosing things to Molly. Molly tells Evan. And by the way, let's ask this in the chat, right? What do you make of people and friends who tell their boyfriend or husband or partners private, personal things? I think that this is a no go. I think that there is a difference between loving your friends and like talking about them with your partner and then disclosing things that your friends have asked you to keep private to your partner and just treating your friends' lives like a gossip source. That's very weird to me, and that's what Molly does. In the next scene, Lucy's sitting on the floor, curling her hair, getting ready to do something, as we all have done at some point, and I already knew that she was going to roll that thigh over her curling iron. Why? Because I've done it before, and also, like, Lucy is just a magnet from all things bad. In the middle of curling her hair, she gets a call from Alex, asking her to hang out later. Lucy is a little bit surprised, which she says later in this episode, because just the previous night, she was asking Alex to degrade her while they were hooking up. And even before he hangs up with her on the phone, he says that he will text her after he's finished wrapping up his other thing. I hate Alex. I hate Alex. The way he has to go out of his way to make Lucy feel unimportant and not special, and assuming that he's with another girl at that present moment, the way that he has to make her feel that way, and all because he knows that he's a bad person. I don't get it. Okay. We see a very quick shot, and I mean quick, because I rewatched this episode 3 times as I prepared my notes. And the first time I did not see it because I was doing laundry, but a quick shot of Bree texting Oliver the photo of her and that freshman Amanda together, right? She's basically like, I peep your game. I know what you're doing. I know you're hooking up with Amanda. Now, after this, she goes into a meeting with one of her professors who tells her that she has been selected as a special talent to showcase her photography because it's only gotten better each semester. She says that she needs to pick 6 photographs to showcase, and I'm not sure if they're going to showcase all 6 or pick some of them. Unimportant, but she gets an opportunity that she is ecstatic about. Bree leaves this classroom and she is grinning ear to ear, only to run into Oliver. I hate Oliver. I made a TikTok video about storylines I'm getting tired of. Alex and Oliver. I just hate them. Okay. Now, this is immediately after she's just sent him this text message. He grabs her by the arm and pulls her into his office. And I'm like, does this school not have cameras and is nobody watching them? Because is none of his behavior, I don't know, concerning? So Bree tells Oliver that he shouldn't be allowed to do this. He shouldn't be allowed to prey on people, and that she talked to the dean about him being a predator just earlier that day. It did make me laugh when Bree just wanted to kind of like spice things up and add some zhuzh to it, and tells Oliver that he's probably going to be getting fired because it was really, really, really bad. Oliver, the narcissist who's always condescending, retorts with how he just had breakfast with the dean. So that's very interesting that none of it was brought up. I'm unclear if this is to show that the dean truly doesn't care about nefarious behavior and predatory behavior and chose friendship and loyalty to Oliver, the professor. Or I'm not sure if this was to call Bree's bluff and if she hadn't yet had that conversation with the dean. Okay. He switches tactics because this clearly isn't working, telling her just being condescending, and ends up saying that he actually feels really sorry for Bree because the way that she sees herself isn't accurate, and she needs to reframe things because she's actually very needy, but by no fault of her own. It's actually very sad and pathetic. It's because of her circumstances as a child, and this is why he is a predator. He uses his position of power weaponized against her. He's making her feel worthless because he has discarded her to move on to the next freshman. It also feels like they get a little bit too old and a little bit too aware, and that's when he moves on. And lastly, he's standing there and weaponizing her trauma. And he is a professor. And I don't even remember what he's a professor of, but he knows what he's doing linguistically, how he's saying things in conversations. He knows what he's doing. Evan's dad obviously pays Sadie's tuition because Sadie calls Steven to thank him for paying her tuition. But when he tries to have small talk with her about her lit professor who was an asshole to her the semester before, she cuts him off, and she really just doesn't have the capacity to do that. So again, I ask you, did Steven really care about her tuition? Or do you agree with my best friend that he was just manipulating her to get her to talk to him? We go from this phone call to Evan joining Wrigley and Evan at the lunchroom and saying that he finally heard from Sadie and that that's somewhat good news. They're not fully speaking, but he heard from Sadie, and also her tuition money went through. All good things, right? Evan says pretty much abruptly and out of the blue that Diana is pregnant, but for Steven not to worry too much because she's already taken care of things and is getting an abortion and has one scheduled. Now, why he did this is, again, because he is misogynistic and he's male-centered and he prioritizes other men and being loyal to other men over actually being a good person, and really even seeing women's feelings as being equal. And Wrigley picks up on this because he says to Evan, you shouldn't be telling Steven this. And Evan's like, I don't know, man. If I got a girl pregnant, I think I'd want to know if I had a kid. And Wrigley, we can tell that he's somewhat of a feminist because he's like, a kid? This is some cells at this point, and it's really not your decision. Wrigley, thank you for doing this. He even tries to shut the conversation down, and he tells them, by the way, that this whole conversation is bullshit. And what that really means is Steven doesn't want a kid. Right? Steven isn't even with Diana. This would just be a means for him to gain access to Diana's father again and for him to manipulate Diana, right? And to have some sort of string of attachment to him. But Pippa walks up to the table and Wrigley says, let's shut this down before Pippa gets up. I don't want to have this conversation in front of her. And Steven immediately lets the news out and tells Pippa Diana's pregnant and storms off to Diana's. He knocks on Diana's door like a cop and says that he wants to talk about this and be consulted before she makes a decision. He sees that this isn't really going anywhere with Diana. So like Professor Oliver and the narcissist that he is, he immediately switches tactics and says, I bet that you have nobody to confide in. That's probably really scary. I mean, did you tell your parents? Did you tell your dad? I bet he'd actually be really excited for us and help us. And Diana immediately knows what Steven is doing, not to mention she's already made her decision. And she's like, so you want me to have a kid so that you can get in my dad's good graces again? And she tells Steven, I can't wait to abort your baby. It is going to be the best part of my year. And as Steven walks out, he says, so that's it? And she's like, yeah, you can't control me anymore, so go try somebody else. And Wrigley said a similar sentiment to him when he brought up his mother and said that Wrigley wouldn't understand because he had a normal family. Now, brooding, angry Steven is in his dorm deciding who should he manipulate next. Diana's right. He does have somebody that he can control. So he decides to pull up Katie Parker's Facebook. Reminder, Katie Parker was the first girl to come out and publicly have allegations against Chris. Also, people were not kind about these allegations. They basically didn't believe her, which is why Lucy jumped in, knowing that it had happened to Pippa as well, defending the both of them. I knew when Steven pulled up her Facebook that he was either going to message Katie, which I think he ultimately did, or do something with the dean to get Katie involved in something that would ultimately get Lucy involved. Wrigley ends up looking for Pippa and finds Bree, who is getting her photos together for the exhibit. They have a drink and sit down and just hang out, and I love how Wrigley is genuinely excited for Bree. He is ecstatic for her. He picks her up and hugs her. If we didn't know any better, it would almost be like a little sister relationship, but he's actually happy for her, like he is for his friends when they accomplish things, because again, Wrigley is one of the only good people in this series. As they're sitting there and chopping it up, Wrigley suggests that Bree take his photo, and all of a sudden Bree gets very intense while doing so, right? Like it was very joking, like, posh. Yeah, strike again. And she's like, be serious. Can you be serious about this? And it's clear that she's not okay. So Wrigley asks her, are you okay? And she loops him in on the fact that she was told by somebody that she was needy, and she just needs to know how Evan was talking about her and discussed her, because she's worried that that's accurate and that she is a needy person, and that that's ultimately what drove Evan to cheat on her. Wrigley tells her, okay, well, Evan is obsessed with you. He's still obsessed with you. He's never said nothing but nice things about you. And then he also brought up Drew and said, you know what? Drew was super into you too, and he found you really intimidating. After they have this conversation, in walks Pippa, who says that she forgot that her and Wrigley had plans and that she needs to pull an all-nighter for her psych paper that she has, which might be true, but she had actually gotten a phone call from Diana moments later asking to hang out, and we know she is bailing on Wrigley to go hang out with Diana. As she is acting like she's going to go write her paper, she literally forgets her psychology textbook, and they're like, don't you need that? And she's like, all awkward because Wrigley is still there. I found it funny that he stuck around for a second. And then we see a very intimate hug between Wrigley and Bree after Pippa has left. And I'm living for the yearning and their love story, as well as Diana and Pippa's. Now, Lucy is all dolled up. She's got that cranberry red lipstick on again. Her hair is curled, half up, half down. She's got her nice little outfit on, and she is meeting Alex at the bar. Again, he needs her to know immediately and implicitly that this will never be anything more than transactional. So he orders her one drink while also kind of mocking the fact that she's coming across very posh. So he orders her the pinkest wine that they have because this is a shitty bar, and comments on the fact that she got all dressed up for them to just hang out, and that this is not a date. She's like, listen, you've made it clear since the moment I met you that you're not looking for a relationship, and you've actually not been very nice to me. So I know that we aren't together, and I know that you're not looking for anything. Topic comes up of conversation where Lucy tries to say that she actually thinks that she might be a horrible person. And again, the moment anything vulnerable is brought up, here goes Alex, right? And he's like, well, give me an example. And this turns into some weird sex thing between them where he has Lucy go apologize to Max. By the way, Lucy, you have done a lot more horrible things objectively than, be mean to Max. Impossible decision, but right now you're kind of complicit in harboring evidence about a murder that Steven was involved in. That's number one. Number two, you were just forced to record a video where you recounted allegations of SA against another student who actually is a predator and a rapist, but on video for your ex. There's a lot more things that she could have told them, but she brings up this because Max is sitting there and probably top of mind. He is also on a date, and Alex suggests that if Lucy was really sorry, she would go up to Max and apologize. And if not, then maybe she actually just gets off on being a bad person. I found this so annoying. She goes up, gives a heartfelt apology while, mind you, he was on a date, like I said, and they go to the car and bone. I don't know what the purpose of Alex and Lucy's relationship is. I truly don't get it. I don't know if this was the precursor for how Max forgives Lucy and they ultimately have like an 8-year relationship where she's dragging him on, or what the importance of that was. We transition from them boning in the car to Pippa in Diana's room, who actually was working on a paper. Like, let's give points where points are due. And by the way, I do not care about her cheating on Wrigley, because she shouldn't even be back together with Wrigley. That's like because she's not knowing how to navigate this situation. So she's in there, and all of a sudden she just abruptly asks Diana if she's pregnant. Diana is mortified because how many people has this information moved through, and why does everybody know this? But then affirms that she is, and she's really more freaked out by Steven and his reaction than she is being pregnant. Pippa ends up affirming Diana and says, Steven is a lot scarier than all of us realize. And they end up passionately kissing because Pippa says that Diana's face was distracting her. They hook up. I think there was a little bit of eat, a little bit of finger, a little bit of stuff going on, right? We transition from the passionate scene with Pippa and Diana to Lucy being called to meet with the dean and Oliver's wife, Marianne, being in the meeting for who knows why, okay? As well as Katie Parker. And it's clear to me that Steven messaged Katie, told her about Lucy, probably anonymously, or told the dean that Lucy also has allegations. He wanted Lucy to be in a position where she can either tell them that she lied and come clean in that moment, which he didn't think she would do, double down to help Katie just for the video to backfire on her later, or to sit there and to try and say nothing. All pretty bad options at this point. Lucy tries to say nothing, and she's like, listen, I don't know how this information got out, but I don't want to do anything. And Lucy's just trying not to fuck up Pippa's life or Katie's or herself, and that's just not going to be possible. Marianne ends up advocating for Lucy, saying that she shouldn't have to share things that she doesn't want to share. And I think that she does this just because she knows that Lucy could technically report her and her husband for misconduct and inappropriate behavior. Lucy ends up outside in the hallway after this meeting and tells Marianne that she should probably worry about her creep husband and the fact that they are actually hurting people and preying on freshman girls. The next scene is Bree sitting on her bed on Facebook as she is all of a sudden invited to a Facebook group. Again, I gave a trigger warning earlier in this episode, but this is going to be trigger warnings for sexual assault. Bree was invited to a Facebook group called Chris is a Rapist. And in the description of this group or something, it says that this happened to Lucy and Katie. Pippa is walking in as Bree is seeing this. And of course, Pippa knows that this has not happened to Lucy. It happened to her. And like, oh shit, this is becoming even more public. They storm into Lucy's room and Bree is just upset over the fact that this happened to Lucy, upset over the fact that she feels like she was too preoccupied with her shit with Oliver to be there for Lucy, and just wondering what she can do. Now, Lucy still acts like she had this happen, right? And Pippa sort of helps Lucy out in this situation. It's kind of gross to say helping each other out because what Lucy did was wrong, but it seems like at this point, Lucy did what she did, right? And they chose to have a friendship. And I think Pippa is just glad that Lucy's not coming out and saying who this actually happened to, and is just sort of sitting in the mess of the situation that she created. Because Pippa doesn't have to share anything ever, really. This is what happened to her. And she ends up saying, I think that Lucy just doesn't really remember much about that night and didn't want to say anything because of that, which is, I think, how Pippa is feeling about the situation herself. They end up leaving Lucy's room because she really just wants to work on her paper. She doesn't really want to talk about it. And Bree tells Pippa that this is just really putting into perspective how horrible some guys are and how they are full-on monsters, which really puts Evan into perspective. And what she means there is that she believes that Evan is not a monster. We see Lucy call someone who we know is Diana, and they meet up in the dining hall. This is one of Lucy's best decisions, being honest, at this point. I just wish it was with a dean. law enforcement, somebody else. Diana doesn't know the fullness of the situation. So she goes into the situation saying to Lucy to not retract her statement about Katie because her and Katie will look crazy at this point. Because Lucy's like, look, I don't want this Facebook group out. I never thought things would blow up. I was just trying to protect Pippa. Now, Lucy, I didn't think she was going to tell her, but she's like, look, we could do that and I could just not say anything except for the fact that Steven knows. And Diana's like, okay, well, that's so stupid that you told Steven. But at the very least, people will just think that Steven is upset about your guys' breakup and like he's just being crazy and people won't believe him. And Lucy's like, no, listen, he made me record a video. He has something way worse over me. And again, I wish she had just said what it was that was worse in her mind so that somebody could bring her back to reality and point out that that's actually not worse. Okay, that's actually not worse. And she says something important, though, to Diana. She's like, look, you know better than anybody that with Steven, you only have bad choices. I tried to tell you about what happened with Macy and Steven, and you didn't believe me. And I think Lucy and Diana, maybe because of their age, believe that if Diana didn't believe her, that other people wouldn't believe her. But I think that Steven has shown tons of sociopathic qualities to tons of people. We move on from Lucy and Diana in the dining hall because Diana presumably has to get to the important appointment so that she can abort Steven's baby, into Bree, who just had the realization that Evan might not be that bad and can offer her a sense of security, to knocking on his door. And as she's walking into his apartment, because like he said, he was always going to take Bree back. It was just a question of if she wanted him back. We transition from her walking into his apartment to them dancing at their wedding with the song Fade Into You playing in the background. Lucy and Steven have a brief conversation where Steven's acting like he's so sorry for Lucy. And he's like, oh my God, like today must be so hard for you. Like, right? Like, especially after this morning, because Lucy and Steven boned that morning. And Lucy's like, actually, I'm sorry, what hard for me? No. I'm feeling nothing but vindicated this weekend. And I'm reassured by the fact that you didn't change for Lydia, despite the fact she's your fiance. And you don't have the capacity to change for anybody. And like point one for Lucy there, because for a moment, Steven didn't know what to say. Also, Lydia peeps this and like she hates Lucy, right? So she walks up and interrupts this conversation in her honestly gorgeous dress, but she's like, Steven, can I pull you away for a second? What are you guys talking about? What are you talking about? And you can see them having an argument in the background, and Lucy's probably chuckling to herself the same way that Diana was like chuckling at Lucy when she didn't know how to handle Steven or what was going on. Steven is a rat. So he's like walking around this wedding trying to basically like fuck with everybody's heads, right? And he sees Bree, stands next to her at the bar, and he's like, wow, you and Wrigley, huh? Such a perfect, great couple. I'm sorry, you and Evan. Oh my God, Freudian slip. You and Evan is such a great couple. And Bree's like, yeah, we are. And you know what? I'm not the kind of person to let one mistake ruin everything. That would be pretty fucking stupid of me, wouldn't it? And then she walks away. I like how we don't even know what's going on, but it doesn't seem like she's letting Steven rock her. And I like that. Buckle up, Bree, like she's ready for whatever to happen at this wedding. We go into Wrigley setting a text on his phone or on his phone, doing something. And then he intentionally, I'm saying intentionally till the cows come home because you can't convince me that he didn't do this on purpose. I don't know what we're setting up with this, but he intentionally left his phone with Steven. And mind you, I don't know why Steven went to his outgoing calls, but I feel like it would have been a lot more beneficial for him to see what he was texting like just a second before. Right? Like a real sleuth would have done that. But regardless, he looks through Wrigley's phone and sees that Wrigley has been FaceTiming Bree. And because I watched this 3 episodes, I can confirm the FaceTimes and calls to Bree and Diana are all today, they say. So the day of this wedding. I am praying that they're trying to throw Steven on the scent of something not real, like an illusion. And I'm hoping that they are all working together collectively to trap Steven. I'm hoping that Bree was talking to Wrigley about what Steven's going to do to try to blow up this wedding, who was talking to Diana about what they're going to do on their end. So I'm hoping that this is all one big conspiracy. The next scene's iconic because Wrigley left his phone down. He grabs Pippa, says, "Can I steal my ex for a second?" and says to Pippa, "I'm just going to pretend like you're the one I'm still in love with." She says, "Smart idea." Okay. And then him and Bree longingly look at each other. And by the way, I've never heard this song in my entire life until Tell Me Lies played it at the end of this. Can't Be Friends. I added it to my playlist. It was such a perfect song to end it with. Da-na-na-da, you are a liar. Ba-na-na-da. So good. The way that they're looking at each other. And Steven's sitting there at the table and he's seeing all of this, right? And he's looking at the call list, he's looking at the two of them, and he's like, these motherfuckers. But I'm curious because here's the thing, guys. They're trying to set up the fact that Steven had not pieced this stuff together until that moment. So presumably what he said on the end of that voicemail was not about Bree and Wrigley. So I'm wondering if Bree and Wrigley, Diana, Pippa, Lucy, like I'm wondering if there's a larger plan here for them to act like Bree and Wrigley have had a relationship to, like I said, take Steven on the scent of something else so that he moves on from whatever he said on that voicemail and focuses on something else. I don't know if they're trying to trick him, but I'm hoping. And if they're not, like I definitely think that Bree and Wrigley become an item at some point hidden. Right. I think that there's going to be a yearning and understanding. They're both tortured souls, but I am hoping that they are all working together. My boyfriend said, I hope they're all working together to kill Steven. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I appreciate the passion from him. Tell me in the comments of this episode what you think is coming, what is happening, how many episodes are left. I'm seeing 2 on my Hulu screen, but then I'm seeing others online speculate that there's 4. Make sure you've liked this episode, share with a friend, leave a comment, and thank you so much for listening to my recap of everything happening on Tell Me Lies.